Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
So we are in the midst of the counting of the Omer. I know with our Friday night service, maybe you haven't been keeping up with it because our services finished too early for us to officially count the Omer. The Omer, unlike Shabbat, cannot be brought in early. We have to wait for those 3 pesky stars up in the sky before it is indeed a new day and we can do the count. But I want to remind you that we are in the midst of that. And of course, the Omer is the counting between Pesach and Shavuot. Shavuot is the holiday that is famous for the wheat harvest, if you're a farmer, but it has a different historical fame for everyone else, which is the giving of the Torah, Matan Toratenu. Right? This is the giving of the Torah for us that God did at Har Sinai, at Mount Sinai. Now, most famous of that moment was not necessarily the entirety of the Torah. There's some debate about exactly how much was given exactly on which day. But one thing that is clear from Jewish reading of the Torah is that the Aseret HaDibrot, the 10 Commandments, as they are usually called in English, were given on that day. You can tell we're big fans of the 10 Commandments around here. Obviously, we recite them during the normal yearly reading, during Shavuot, and any other time that we can get away with it. We have them written on the old first ark doors of Temple Israel that are hanging up on the wall outside, a wonderful tribute that helps us remember our 70th anniversary being celebrated this coming Sunday. But there's a little bit of an issue. As much as I am pro 10 Commandments, I feel that sometimes we don't always know the 10 Commandments. So let's do a very quick review and then see where we are. What is the first commandment?
No other God.
No.
Incorrect. Maybe.
I am your God that brought you out of Egypt, out of the house of bondage.
Anochi, right? I am Adonai, your God, right? You can look at the abbreviated versions on the tablet outside, but they're not in here now, so no cheating. But it begins with the declaration that God is, Adonai is our God, and that is a call to belief. You're not in bad company, though, for being confused about that being the first commandment, and we will loop back to that. So if that's the first commandment, what's the second commandment?
Have no other gods, plural, before me.
And there's a part 2 to second commandment.
Well, images.
And don't have idols, right? Don't have any other gods and don't make images, not only of other gods, but even of our God. That is where the golden calf got us wrong, where they thought they were making an image of Adonai. Even if it's of Adonai, you're still in trouble when you're making an image. And then commandment number 3.
Do not carry or misuse the name of God.
Do not take God's name in vain, which of course is a terrible translation because it means something incomprehensible in English, because what does in vain mean? It basically means we don't swear oaths using God's name when we know we're lying. Oaths were a very important part of the civil and judicial system in the ancient world, and you would swear by God's name at certain times as part of those proceedings, and that meant that you had to be absolutely honest that you were legitimately swearing by God's name and not just, lying. It's sort of the first level of perjury that is protected against. Mitzvah number 4. What are we doing here right now? Shabbat. Number 5.
Parents.
Honoring our parents. Number 6.
Murder.
Don't murder, don't kill. We're going to come back to that as well. Number 7.
Steal. Adultery.
Do not steal.
Adultery first. Not that that's a requirement. Now you don't have to do adultery before stealing, but don't commit adultery. And I'll let you explain what that word means over there. And then we come to commandment number 8, which is
Do not steal.
do not steal, or as some have interpreted it, it's actually talking about kidnapping in that particular instance, as if that would be a capital crime, unlike the other form of stealing for property, for which is never a capital offense, something that Europe took a few thousand years to figure out. But then we come on to commandment number 9.
Do not lie.
Here it's bear false witness, which is a different form of perjury, where you act as a lying witness on behalf of someone else. You're not taking an oath of, I never touched his goat. You are saying, I saw him make a contract, when in fact you didn't see him make a contract. So it's a different form of perjuring oneself. And then, last but not least, number 10 is?
False testimony, this person, I think.
No, that's where we just were, false witness.
Appearance.
Don't covet.
Oh, don't covet.
Don't covet, which is its own complicated issue, which we can talk about afterwards if you like, because that word covet is also one of those obscure English words. Okay, now, as we went through this, you may have noticed that that first commandment seemed a little bit up in the air. The concept of whether it is just one big commandment which says no other gods and no idols, or whether that maybe should be two commandments, because it's kind of two topics. The idea of whether it's don't murder or don't kill. Does don't steal mean don't steal, or does it mean don't kidnap? And one we didn't talk about, which I'll bring to your attention now, is that last one about coveting has multiple sub-clauses that some could interpret as being separate commandments, as there are different things one's not supposed to covet as independent issues. Now, if it sounds like we're making a lot of a big deal over this, well, that's because people have. While the Jewish conception, which we just went through, is fairly universally agreed upon, although there are still Jewish scholars who debate some of the breakdown. I will remind you again, the Torah did not write them in nice, neat text with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, which would have made our job much easier. Other religions that look to our Bible as part of theirs have had a long history of debate and argument over these 10. That is to say, the Catholics don't agree with the Lutherans don't agree with other Protestants, and there are other variations and denominations which argue about this. If you added up all of the commandments that different denominations of different groups that have borrowed our Bible, you would end up with about 14 different commandments out of these 10, depending upon how you slice each one of them, and you would have some substantial definitional changes between whether or not taking God's name in vain means don't swear, like people who don't want someone to say OMG, because that would be violating the 10th commandment. It's not. Or whether or not killing and murder are different and distinct things, whether it is theft or kidnap. There are substantial debates here. Now, having said that I am a pro 10 commandment guy, you may be then surprised to hear that I am an anti-public display of the 10 commandments guy. Just yesterday, there was a bill passed in Louisiana, House Bill 71, if I'm not mistaken, that will require all public schools to have a precise text of the 10 commandments, which is a heavily abridged version drawn from the King James Bible, printed and displayed in every public classroom in the entire state. Wow. Now, I like the 10 Commandments. You would think I'd be jumping for joy that someone would want to put the 10 Commandments in front of more eyes. I mean, we struggled a little bit here to get all 10. Wouldn't it be great if from kindergarten all the way through university, everybody had to see them day after day on that wall? Well, yes, if you're at synagogue. Come to shul and look at our 10 Commandments up on that wall, learn them, and we can debate and discuss and talk about all their implications. But what's wrong with putting that into a public sphere, a school in particular? Any?
Separation of religion and state.
Separation of religion and state. Now, that is a constitutional issue, and one that I think is definitely worthy of concern. As a recovering political scientist, I am very aware of the importance of our Constitution and the protections it has afforded us as the Jewish people in this country through good and bad times, depending upon who was adjudicating. But I'd like to point out that it's not only that this seems to be a fairly blatant violation of that First Amendment in our Constitution, because this does seem to be stepping across the line of establishing a preference for a particular religion. But I would like to point out that not only does it seem to be violating the Constitution, it is also not good for us. Meaning, even if the Constitution were silent on the issue, even if there was no civil objection to doing this, if we lived in a country without our protections, I would still be uncomfortable Why? Because the version that is going up on the wall is not the Jewish version. It is a Christian version. Now, it is a debated Christian version, and I'm waiting to see whether other Christians object to the particular text. But it is definitely not the Jewish version.
And it's bringing in the Christian values into the day-to-day life of the students, and you have other religions, you have Muslims.
And again, for those that aren't Jewish, there are all the same concerns. But for the moment, just to make sure that we can, even within our own narrow interest, recognize the challenge here. If you are a Jewish student going to a public school, and every day you look up at a piece of our Bible that has been co-opted, that has been reworded, and has been recast in a way that is contrary to the way you are learning about that in your own religious education, then you are constantly being told that your religion is wrong. And you are also being constantly reminded that you're not really one of us. You can't even read this right. You don't even get this correctly. Because the version that your rabbi told you on Friday night is not the version that's up on the walls. And the way that it is understood in congregation is not the way that it's understood in your school. And I'll tell you, as much as I wish that everything I told people in the synagogue would supersede whatever they might happen to hear within a classroom, I know that's not the case. Children, especially children, that hear from their respected teachers, or at the very least the teachers who have authority over them, constantly that this is the truth, are going to find it very hard to reconcile what they are learning Jewishly with what they are being shown within that most important sphere for most children's lives, that the educational system. This is not a boon for Ten Commandment education. This is not a boon for bringing our Bible to the world. Yes, we are an Or Lagoyim, we are a light to the nation, but we are a light to the nation in different ways. We are not about billboards and plastering, and we are certainly not about coercing others to adopt and accept our version. We are instead about demonstrating the power of living, not only by the Ten Commandments, by the other 603 as well, and what those actually mean for the quality of life and the quality of the value of life. This sort of thing is, unfortunately, the antithesis of that. Judaism has worked for 2,000 years to protect, to grow, and find our strength despite the external pressures, and we have learned that our Judaism can thrive and can indeed even spread and help others see the light of God without coercion. That in a free marketplace of ideas, we have continued to find our niche. We have continued to be an influence for good in the world. If we allow coercion to become a component of religious education, even if they are superficially taking something from our religion as though it were being shared, I am most afraid that we will be swamped, we will be overcome, and our children in particular will be confused and potentially alienated either from their American heritage or their Jewish heritage. So please keep your eye out for these types of things. I know we're not in Louisiana, so there's very little we can do directly. My hope is that this will eventually hit the various tripwires within the American constitutional system, but we have to be aware that there are efforts such as this, and even though it seems to be drawing from our text and our ideas, we have to recognize that this is a chimera, this is a chameleon, and not indeed a Jewish idea. Shabbat Shalom.